Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, coming to you from a regular time of Wednesday, 7 p.m. every week on YouTube and what's the other ones? Twitter and Facebook. My name is Mark Devlin. I'm the host of Scotland's #1 politics show and chat from anti-nationalist perspective. I'm here tonight with my co-hosts David Griffiths and Mary Devlin. How are you both tonight?
Well, I'm doing very well on this lovely summer's night.
I'm doing okay also. I'm a little bruised, which I'll maybe explain later, but it's not very summery here, sadly. But yeah, all good, thank you.
Right, very good. Okay, so Mary, what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Well, I'm going to be talking about how £450 million has to be returned because to the EU because the Scottish government didn't get around to spending it.
It's an unbelievable story. David, what have you got for us?
Tonight, I will be looking at recent opinion polls and likely outcomes.
Right, and we're all going to be looking at leaders' debate, and we're going to ask also what's going to happen if and when Labour get in, and of course we're going to be doing all kinds of other things that Mary's going to tell us about right now.
Well, we're also going to have our Zoomer of the Week.
Yes, of course, we will do that. So we're back with all this and much more in just a few seconds. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics and chat. My name is Mark Devlin. I'm the host for you every week here. The Majority's aim is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that is strangling Scotland's potential. And we hope that we'll be seeing some progress on that at last. I'm here tonight with David and Mary. And David, tell us then about what happened to you. Get your injury there.
Indeed. They call me DIY Dave, except sadly they don't because I'm terrible. I'm the least handy man in the world. And
I don't.
Exactly. So I was trying to fix a bed spring which had come loose. And so I had a nice pair of pliers and I was tugging away and I went whack! Pliers and fist hit me right in the front tooth, through my lip. And it's... oh boy, it's sore. But anyway, I'm okay. I'll survive. Don't worry.
You survive. Okay, you're with us here.
As long as you can still speak, we're okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. Very good. All right. As always, a huge thanks to our friends at UK Union Voice and Unite Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching from tonight.
Indeedy. And remember, sharing is caring. So the #1 thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube.
That's right.
And if you don't subscribe, just hit a like anyway. And if you can, of course, subscribe, do so, which will increase the reach of the show at just the click of a button.
And as usual, I'll be handling the relentless flow of comments. So please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to put as many up on screen as I can.
Right. Okay, very good. Last week we told you we're starting a crowdfunder for billboards. And we put that out 2 days ago. It is for the SNPOUT billboards. Here they are here. And I don't know why you guys all went to that side this time.
Nope.
Normally go to the other side.
Oh, I've never been on that side before.
Okay. Anyway, so that aside, so this is a SNPOUT campaign. If you would like to see a giant this message on billboards around the Scotland, then please do donate to that. We can. Now, the good news is that since we put it out a couple of days ago, we have had oh God, it's all
just
over
over
£1,000.
Yes,
over £1,000 donated so far. So thank you to everyone who's donated. Some of you who are watching, of course, have donated so far. But we still have a long way to reach our target. Target is £4,000. We can get a big lot of billboards out. We can do a bit maybe with 2,000. I'm not too sure. Mary does the magic, talking around with the various companies.
Well, to be honest, I need about £2,000 to be able to start talking to the billboard companies.
Right. So we're about halfway there. Not bad after 2 days. So I think we could actually end up with a bit more. Now, if you can help, please go to that page there, which is donorbox.org/SNPOUT. If you can't remember that, then just go to the Majority's website and click the button down at the on the right hand side, and that will let you know. It's all over the place. That will let you know. Well, that will just take you straight to the donation page. Now, if you're on YouTube, you can also do a super thanks. super sticker. And if those come up during the show, we will try and give you a shout out. But sometimes we can't. We miss them. They're not that easy to find. Okay, so SNP out. David, what kind of message would you like to send to the SNP?
Well, my message to the SNP is quite simple. You guys say you want Tories out of Scotland. You say you want change, and you always tell us that Scotland never gets the government for which we vote. Okay, well, if that's true, there's a very simple solution to all those issues, and it's something all Scots can do very easily. Vote Labour next month. That way, you'll stop people wasting their vote on the SNP, which is, after all, a regional protest party, which means by voting for them, you will always get the government that England votes for. So stop it. Accept the fact that you're not going to get independence. You never were. Accept the fact that it's not happening. It's over. Move on and tell your voters to vote Labour if they want change. That's what I would say to the SNP.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very strange situation at the moment for I mean, you're seeing people saying, yeah, I'm going to vote for Scottish independence. Well, you know, wait a minute, that's absolutely not going to happen right now. So what are you doing? You're throwing away your vote.
Yep.
How does that help anyone?
Exactly.
I mean, if you're on that side, if you don't like the Tories, then how does throwing away your vote help? I just don't get it at all. And there seems to be, I don't know if it's bots on Twitter or if it's real people, but there seems to be this almost willful, not neglect is not really the word, but missing the point,
Yes.
right, of what's going on here. And they've been going on for so long about how they hate the Tories, and then they're like, oh no, we'll just vote so we keep them in.
It's bizarre, isn't it? So I mean, it's true. It's like it's willful misunderstanding of the logic of elections, and it's the same argument you'll have every time if someone says, "Oh, I want Scotland to get the government it votes for." Right. So which government are you voting for? Oh, well, I want independence. No. What's the answer though? In a Westminster election, which government is it you want to see elected? Oh, I don't care. They're all by each other, and it goes round in circles. They can't ever say, "Well, actually, I prefer Labour," because if they did, you would just say, "Well, vote Labour in that case." They genuinely don't have an argument anymore. Voting SNP is now pointless. It's pointless for everybody, and that will be reflected in the polls and the actual results, I'm sure, genuinely.
Right, we'll talk about momentum in a second. So we'll just take a short break and we'll come back to talk about the leaders' debate and so on. Right, thank you all for joining us tonight. Hopefully, I don't know, it's a bit variable weather, isn't it? You know, some people are getting the sun, some people are getting the rain. We went out, it looked beautifully sunny, and we got rained on straight away. Of course, that is the typical.
That's Scotland for you.
Yes, that's typical. I suppose now let's talk about the various leader debates.
Yep.
Now, election season, as we all know, is underway, and we've had a few leaders debates. There was a Scottish leaders debate. And, the first question in this, yeah, exactly, Mary. Well, the first question in this was why?
Yeah.
We're having this debate even because why? First of all, why Scotland? Special zone debate. And then secondly, none of the people who were in the debate were actually standing MPs. So what is this, a kind of broad analysis? I mean, and if the policies are specifically Scottish in the Scottish Parliament, then they're not, they're devolved as well. So,
yeah.
In many cases. So what was the point of this thing, David? What did you think?
The point of it, I think, is just to make the Scottish, devolved leaders feel that they're part of the big debate, because they try to deal them in whenever it comes to this time, because, of course, notionally at least, the party leader of the SNP in particular is the leader at Holyrood, although they have their own leader in at Westminster. So it does seem odd to me. I guess it's just easier to get the four guys who live and work here to talk rather than, you couldn't exactly get four. Is there a Scottish Conservative Westminster leader? Is there a Labour leader? Until 6 months ago, it would only been Ian Murray himself, So it's the tricky one, I suppose. But I guess those are the four individuals most closely associated with leadership of the parties in Scotland. But I would question why you would give members of a devolved legislature a platform to talk about elections to another body. I really...
Yes, it seems...
Sorry, did it happen in Wales?
Oh.
Does anyone know if Welsh TV had a Welsh leaders debate?
I wonder.
Well, I think they've got their own problems down there. I've not been following that, but certainly some issues there, irrespective of whether they should be on there. Now, let's see, we've got a wee clip here. I tried for ages to find clips for this, and this is the only one I could find. So
I don't think anyone watched it. Did
no,
they?
that's the thing. I mean, you get a
Have
medal.
you ever met
there.
anyone who watched it?
You get a medal there, David, for actually watching it.
Every minute, yep, we did.
All right. Now, it's supposed to be, our job maybe to do that, but I mean, it's so uninspiring. What's the point?
Yeah. Indeed.
Anyway, let's have a look at this.
You can get rid of 6 Tory MPs. Labour can get rid of an entire Tory government. And in 2017 and 2019, you said, don't vote Labour because they can't win this election. Now in 2024, you're saying don't vote Labour because they can't lose this election. But isn't it the case that we can't take the risk? We can't afford another 5 years of this rotten Tory government, and the only way to make sure we get rid of the Tories is by electing a Labour government, and in 4 weeks they could be gone if people choose Labour in this election.
This is very unlike you to demonstrate such a lack of self-confidence. Normally you're very self-confident about the Labour Party. The Labour Party's going to walk it in England. The Tories are finished.
What do you think of that, David?
Well, that is bizarre. That's a really bizarre exchange, because you get Anna Sarwar, who's factually stating if you vote Labour in 4 weeks, the Conservative government will be gone. And Swinney, don't take the chance. And Swinney's saying, ooh, you got no self-confidence. Normally, if Sarwar had said, oh, we're definitely going to win, Swinney would presumably say, oh, you're a bit full of yourself, are you not? So really, that's a nonsensible rejoinder. He has got no argument against Swinney. And what I thought of the show, very quick views on each of the 4 debaters. Swinney is a dreadful debater, as you saw there. He doesn't have quickness of thought, and he looks awful when he's doing it. He just doesn't come across well, as we'll talk.
Looks like a giraffe.
He
sticks his neck right out.
Alex is saying Swinney pushes his neck forward.
It's true. It's like Jack Charlton was the same. The old footballer. He was the very same odd-looking man, and some of his answers were awful. Like, what's different about you? I'm John Swinney. I don't mean
yes, I heard about that as well.
Indeed, I thought at times Douglas Ross struggled a bit. He got some difficult questions, and he did struggle a bit with some of them, but he did okay. He's not a bad debater. I don't think he's a great parliamentarian at all, but he can argue a point up to a certain extent. Anyway, Cole Hamilton, he said some sensible stuff, but he seemed overall to be pitching to be Sarwar's coalition partner in 2 years. That's what it came across. That's how it came across. And Sarwar, frankly, as that little exchange showed, had the air of a man who knows his party's about to have a big, big success. That's how he came across. Without being, I wouldn't say he was like overconfident, but he made the point that, well, we can win this, but let's not take a chance. So he was probably edged at Sarwar, I would say, just about, on points.
Yeah, so I mean, but what does it matter? It's not going to. It's not going to change the dial in any way at all.
Nope.
It's really like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, why bother? This is the thing, and I think this shows it. I think to some extent, why do we even have this? Let's look at this T-shirt.
They're not speaking.
Why do we even have this? The
Sorry.
Parliament, when it's like, it doesn't matter, right?
They're not speaking for their MPs, are they? Are they the head of the? They're not the head of the MPs from Scotland, are they?
No, absolutely, they are not. Flynn is, of course, the leader of
the SNP are. SNP is, no?
Well, I don't think he's the leader of the party, but this is why there's this constant rancor between the SNP MPs in Westminster and in Holyrood, and they both. I was sent quotes, real profane quotes, showing how the SNP MPs were describing the characters in Holyrood, and it's very, very critical indeed, because they can see the SNP MPs, quite a few of them are about to lose their jobs, mainly because of the shenanigans in Holyrood.
And the Greens, in fact, they're losing because of the Greens.
That's true, exactly right, and because of the idiot decision to marry up with the Greens. But are they? It's an interesting point. Who actually makes the decisions? Who is ultimately responsible for driving policy? It's probably the NEC rather than any individual, to be honest, within the SNP. But who's actually in charge of dictating policy at Westminster? That's a very good question. I don't know the answer. Is it Swinney or is it Flynn? I wonder.
We don't know.
Well, yes. I mean, it's you could say 2 bald men fighting over a comb.
That's literally true. Yeah, exactly.
In that case,
they're not going to enact any policies anyway. So
not to disparage people who don't have that much hair. But did you see that Kate Forbes came on and she said there weren't enough women in the debate? It's like, well, there's not enough women because you didn't run to be a leader.
That's true. But what they were saying, there was one party leader who wasn't invited. Tell me you're not talking about Lorna Slater, guys. Were people seriously advocating for Lorna Slater to be standing in that thing? What on earth would she have brought to that debate? Seriously.
She should still be in hiding after all that DRS
So right.
nonsense.
Well, perhaps that's true. And I'm trying to get used to this is shuffling everything around
What
here.
are you doing, Mark? I'm jumping all over the place.
They changed the system, so now things aren't where they should be. Anyway, right. Okay. So then there was the big hitters, so to speak, last night with the Starmer and Sunak debate. Here I've got this Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer. Now Rishi isn't a Sir yet. Anyway, that was pretty tedious, I thought. Well, we found out that Sir Keir's dad was a toolmaker and that Rishi Sunak has a plan.
Aye.
But
we didn't say what the plan was. It's just everything that everyone said. He just said, "I have a plan." It's like, well, if you could share that with us, that we would like to hear what these plans are. Is it just the one plan, or is there like separate plans for each?
It's just
thing?
that just seems there was not really a plan. I think anyway, a lot of talk about tax as well. It says we're going to have a free discussion about this, so it might just go off on a tangent, but. It was a bit of a weird one, wasn't it? I didn't like the format.
No.
I thought the format was really annoying. It was like, just when a person's getting into their swing, it's like, no, you've had your 45 seconds. Shut up right now. And it was like, leave them alone. Like, let them talk a wee bit, at least maybe a minute and a half or something like that. So you could get a little bit, you could maybe find out what Sunak's plan was, or you could find out a little bit.
I don't think he was ever going to say.
No chance.
And people kept criticising Starmer for being vague. It's like, well, I don't think Sunak was any clearer.
Yeah. Well, what, David, your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, to be honest, in terms of the abilities of both guys to debate in what was effectively a sub-presidential type face-off like they do in America, not impressed at all. I found it largely unwatchable, to be honest. You can see that Sunak is not really up to the job, and Starmer is oddly uncharismatic. He has that kind of fixed expression.
Yeah.
He doesn't have I make more use of facial expression than he does. I mean, genuinely. So, I mean, how hard can it be, really, or even to use your hands? But remember when Starmer started in Parliament and he was asking questions, he would nod his head. He was always being told to do that, and he would just go like this. It's like, what are you doing? That's not how you do it at all. You just nod your head like that. That's what you do. He's very stiff. He's very
he's quite a stiff person. You can see that.
I think maybe he lacks confidence.
Possible. I mean, there is an expression in his eyes. I was wondering, is it diffidence? Does he think, God, I'm not good enough to do this? I wonder. It's very interesting. But I mean, he's had very, very senior jobs, and the truth is, all he has to do is keep his mouth shut and keep his conduct good. He's going to become Prime Minister, so he's probably thinking, I'm not taking any chances here. But I have to say, I've used this before, I'm sure. It reminded me of the commentator in the US who summed up Reagan against Walter Fritz Mondale as the evil of two lessers. And that's like it was.
That's quite good.
It's true. I'm not disparaging Starmer's capability to be Prime Minister. I think he's going to become Prime Minister. He may do a good job. I hope he does. But he isn't a great debater. And the two of them, as a spectacle, it was pretty awful, really. Yes.
Well, I mean, maybe to use another expression, it was a bit like being savaged by two dead sheep.
Yeah, quite.
So the whole, I think many people watching this, though, also to use another expression, are like, can't they both lose?
Yeah, quite.
So this idea that this is all we got. Now, I suppose we haven't actually put this in the thing. That's what I said, free discussion. There is the elephant in the room. Nigel Farage announced his candidacy, and that's going to the Tories, of course, in disarray because of that. In fact, did you notice when Sunak did his closing statements, he was like, "Don't vote for anyone else." That was the first part, and I was really surprised at that. That seemed very weak, and it shows that they're scared really of this. Other parties coming in and say, "Oh, of course, it has to be reform," and whether they're going to do anything now. Reform isn't really anything in Scotland. They're not in play here at all.
No.
So certainly it is a UK, not UK thing. It's more of an English thing, certainly. But do you have any thoughts on how that would play out
in terms of reform? It's been a fascinating turn of events. I mean, until very recently, people I know who have been talking to reform have been talking about Richard Tice and how involved he is and how determined he is to get more back for the money he's invested, and that he's looking at the Holyrood election in 2 years and he's going to stand and there's no chance of Farage coming back. And suddenly, Farage is now the leader and he's standing in Clacton, which is where Tice was going to be. Wow, okay. And Tice is saying, yeah, I back this move. Really? Okay, great. Well, terrific. If you do.
Well, I personally didn't like Tice very much. I mean, I haven't met him, but I just thought he's just not very good. And also, a few years ago, he came on to the TV and he said that Scotland should have its own immigration policy. And I was like, what the hell is this nonsense?
Yeah.
You know, there's been some discussion about that they're not very principled. And there's an ongoing debate, certainly on Twitter, about whether a party that's a populist party can continue beyond an election where they might have a lot of popular support but not win any seats. And it's a fascinating question, really, because do you have to be principled first of all, have principles to have a party, or do you get your principles later? That's kind of a debate that's going on, and certainly to some extent they've got conservative imagination, or what they might say is people who consider themselves to be true conservatives in England anyway. They have an alternative. Here we don't have that. So
that's true. I mean, the one thing I believe is they genuinely are planning to make a splash in Holyrood in 2026 because, simply because, guys, in Holyrood it takes. I mean, I've been asked this by people who are close to reform. What kind of percentage would it take for us to get a seat? Is what they asked me, and I said it would be between 5 and 6% minimum, and about say 17,000, 18,000 votes in a region, and you've got a really good chance of getting a seat, particularly. So that's where their most, if you like, fertile ground is in Holyrood, because it lends itself to smaller parties. That's the point of it. Remember at the start, I always say the SNP got 1 million less votes in 2021 and got 2 seats, whereas the Greens got 220,000 less votes, which got them 8 seats. If they could get 150,000 votes in Scotland, reform, they'll get 5 or 6 seats, guaranteed, pretty much. So
so maybe it'll be something that comes up for the next election. Now,
Paul Halford has a good comment here. He says, "My concern is Labour gets in, they mess it up, and in 2 years' time, the SNP use that to keep in power."
That is exactly the biggest issue we face, Paul. Well done, because I've been saying it for weeks. That is a real problem. If they get in there and make a real mess of it, and remember, parties are not popular mid-first term, very rarely are, and the Parliament will be just under 2 years old when it comes to the Scottish elections. That is a real issue, and it's something Labour has to be very, very careful about. They can't do anything too stupid in their first 2 years. So watch out.
Well, you don't know what's going to happen with events. Events, dear boy. All the quotes are coming out today. But I do think that the Labour Party has to take some action to protect itself against resurgent nationalism. And let's just say this. Let's say if you tactically vote for Labour and you're a natural conservative and you do vote for Labour, you have a voice in that, right? It's not like I'm just lending my vote to Labour. It's like you've given your vote to Labour,
right?
So you better use it and then say, no, we don't want this back in here again. So that's an important point. Not people say I'm lending my vote or I'm tactically voting. Well, you're actually in there. You're really voting.
That's it.
Right. So you might as well, you get the benefit out of it that you can. And the benefit for us is that. Now, of course, nationalists use these debates for the grievances. Let's see what we got first of all. Keith Brown. He said, well, they didn't talk about Scotland. Let's see. I've got this here somewhere. Where is he? Oh, here we go. Right.
I think it should have had a disclaimer saying not for viewers in Scotland. Of course, there wasn't one mention of Scotland. The largest party in Scotland, the third largest party in the House of Commons, was excluded from it. And of course, the really important things for Scotland, Brexit, the impact of it, and the offer from both Tory and Labour to continue with austerity weren't really covered. So, and of course, we got to the end of the debate and we were talking about England's hopes for the European Championships, and best of luck to them. It was as if Scotland hadn't even qualified. So it really was not relevant or instructive or helpful for the people of Scotland.
Wow, the people of Scotland are always demanding stuff, aren't they?
Well, they didn't mention Yorkshire or Cornwall or anywhere else.
Or really ridiculous.
So I don't know why they would mention Scotland.
Well, I mean, was there a Cornwall leaders debate? This is the big question. I mean, maybe there's some people in Cornwall, nationalists in Cornwall. Maybe there's a word for that, Cornwall nationalists.
Right. I just wonder how many times they mentioned Northern Ireland. Or I wonder how many times they actually used the name of the country, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Was that mentioned, Keith? Tell me.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, why didn't you say so? honestly.
Yeah, and I noticed other things like they didn't mention Brexit. Now that I thought it was quite interesting that Brexit wasn't mentioned, because you know what,
It was years ago.
it's a dead deal. And they're, like, you know, get nationalists who are complaining about a referendum 2014, a Brexit referendum, God knows when that was, can't remember. 2019, no, 16, right?
Yeah,
It's a long time ago now.
8 years ago.
It's a really long time ago. So there's that. Now the second part was this football. People complain about the football. Oh my God, it's so terrible to ask.
It's the football.
To ask two guys who support England what their views are on the English team. I mean, should they always have to do a disclaimer? Oh, but for our viewers in Scotland, I will fully support you in the Euros as well. Is that really what we demand from them? That's like coerced speech almost. David, do you know that we're not football people?
Yeah, indeed.
Right, right. So is it different for actual football fans?
Well, in all honesty, I speak to football fans a lot, as I'm sure you can guess, as you can imagine. Most football fans I know who are of the same persuasion as I am couldn't care less about the Scotland national team. It's just became very dull back in about the early 90s. We used to qualify for tournaments and we would routinely be sent packing at the first stage every time. Scotland has never, in all of the times it's qualified for the European Championships or the World Cup, never get out of the qualifying stages once they get to the final. So it's three games and then straight back home, first flight. That's what happens. So it's very difficult to get excited about them. Same thing happened in the last European Championships when we played England and Croatia and whoever else it was. The same thing happened then, and it'll almost certainly happen this time at all. In addition, because the Scotland national team, frankly, guys, isn't very good. I'm sorry.
This is the basic point, though, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. We got in. I think I can't remember how we qualified. I think we actually came second behind Spain. We won our first 5 games in the qualifiers, including beating Spain, and we ended up as group runners-up. So we got there. Great, it's an achievement. But we've got a very mediocre set of players, no superstars. I'd be surprised if you guys could name more than 2 players in the Scotland squad. Could you do it?
Oh,
I couldn't mention one.
I couldn't even name one.
There you go. Well, there you go. So, see, whereas had this been 40 years ago, you'd all have known Kenny Dalglish and Graham Sunak. And them for sure. And even before that, you'd have known Joe Jordan, and even before that, Billy Bremner and Dennis Law and all these guys.
Yeah, of course.
Now, probably our most famous players are Scott McTominay and John McGinn. Probably.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Exactly. So you won't know these guys at all. And they're all right, but they're just not great. So frankly, the Scotland national team isn't really much to talk about, and I wouldn't waste my time talking about them if I was
right, okay. Right, but the question here is that this is the thing to Stephen Flynn was asked, you know, okay, if you weren't in there, would you support England? Right? Yeah. This is your neighbour. Now he said, no, I don't, because they're a rival. Okay. Yeah. Now, I mean, to people who don't follow football, that just seems like nationalist sour grapes. Really, you know, I've got many English friends. I want them to do well. Of course, if it was Scotland versus England, you'd be like, of course, I want Scotland to win. That's just not natural, right? But if it's just England in the thing, well, what's the problem there? Now, people say, I remember in the few conversations I have with people who talk football, it's like, oh, they're so arrogant because they always go on about 1966, this kind of thing. And I mean, David, you must have some insight into that footballer's vibe. And you can be on. It's fair enough to be honest. You don't need to say what you think I would like to hear.
Sure, I'll tell you how it really is with football rivals, guys. When it comes to club rivalry and even to a certain extent international rivalry, there's been a big change. I remember this clearly. The 1970 World Cup, I remember very clearly. England were playing West Germany as it was then in the quarter-final, and I was at Sunday school. Okay, talk about a change. Good grief. In those days, I used to go at Sunday school in the evening. And as I left, the game had kicked off, and somebody said to me, England are winning 1-0. And I went running up the road, and I saw a guy who was a Rangers fan like me, and I said, England are 1-up. He went, yes, and we were really pleased England were 1-up. Then by the time of the next World Cup, England didn't qualify, Scotland did. And then the one after that, England didn't qualify and Scotland did. After that, England did qualify, and we hated it. We wanted them to lose. That's how it had changed in that time. Mm-hmm. As for club rivalry, in the 60s, I don't really remember it being very bitter. In terms of wanting your opponents to lose, until Celtic won the European Cup and Rangers were beaten in the final of the same year of the Cup Winners' Cup, and then suddenly Celtic became more successful than Rangers for a time, and so some real nasty, real rivalry started. And now, I remember watching the 1970 European Cup final, Celtic against Feyenoord, and it said Feyenoord, Holland, and Celtic, Scotland, and I was only 9, and I said, God, so they're from Scotland. Why do I want them to lose again? Oh, that's because they're Celtic. That's right. By that time, I was just a young kid, but I really didn't want them to win. And
well, the interesting part, I guess, is the conflation of nationalism with the national team.
That's true, and that's exactly what I was told yesterday. A guy, you know him actually, Colin, said to me, I just can't stand this idea that it's all an extension of nationalism. So from the national team, you don't really care if the other team wins. The way I describe it with England is, if England win, great. If England lose, great. I don't really care. I don't get into international football. Where you really see rivalry is in the club football, where these clubs, as Archie Macpherson famously said, they really do hate each other. And that's the truth. But when it comes to Scotland, England, most of my pals, they don't really mind if England won. If you pinned them down and said, come on, tell me the honest truth, you want England to win this tournament, they'd say, no, I don't really. But would they care if they did win it? No, not really. Not at all. Right. That's how it is. So Flynn, just saying straight out no, that's just going back to the days when we just didn't want each other to do well, and there's no need for it at all. These days, the England team's got terrific young players, and they're unfettered by any expectation or any fear because they're very young. They've got a really good chance, and England has one of the best players in the world, a guy called Jude Bellingham, so they could win it. They could do.
Right. Okay.
Anyway,
well, that was a football interlude.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
By David Griffiths, football commentator extraordinaire. We'll finish this segment here with Stephen Flynn saying he was a nationalist. I've got this wee video here.
I've been called a nationalist. I've been called a nationalist. I'm a nationalist at this general election. We are going to win.
No, you're not.
I amazingly managed to get some facts for that, but once again confirming that they are indeed actually nationalists. They say I'm not a nationalist. In fact, we might come back to that very topic a little bit later. This is kind of a new view, so we'll leave it on here for the moment. Okay, we'll be back in a second. Have you donated to the majority's crowdfunder for SNPOUT billboards yet? Well, please do so if you can. If you're able, drop in a $5, $10 would be great. £2, even if that's all you feel you can afford. Everything helps, and we can get the message loud and clear to, especially if we target some tactical voting constituencies, we can, maybe it's good. Anyway, it's good. It's good to have it up. The SNPOUT, big 20-foot high letters. What more could you want? Right, Mary Black. Actually,
no, we don't want Mary Black.
We don't want Mary Black. We'll leave Mary Black alone.
No.
Right, okay. We're on to a question, though, of the day, which was when we were trying to figure out what this show was going to be about. We're going to say, well, what does a Labour victory actually mean for Scotland? This is an interesting question because maybe there's three parts of it. Will they win? And that seems likely. Can they maintain that win through to 2026, which we kind of came on to there? And what does it actually mean for Scots, and for the so-called Scottish Parliament? David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, in order, can Labour win this election decisively in Scotland? According to polling, absolutely they can. They're almost at the stage now where they're looking like polling double the number of seats the SNP, and I'll come on to that later. Can they maintain that win through to 2026? Well, that's a point I think Paul mentioned earlier. They really have to avoid doing anything that's going to be too controversial in those first 2 years, which it's possible, but they really have to maintain that lead because it's crucial. Because what this means for Scotland, our answer to the third question is, we've heard the nationalist grievance whine for years and decades now. Scotland never gets the government it votes for, which is a total lie anyway. As I've said on here, yes. Scotland has received the government it voted for on 11 occasions since World War II, and on 2 occasions Scots' votes directly meant that the Conservative majority in England was overturned and that a Labour government was elected, and that happened as recently as the 1970s, twice. So it's a complete misnomer. But what it means is Labour has to learn very quickly after, 17 years? Now, how many years is it since... it's 14 years, sorry, that Labour's been in opposition. They're going to have to learn very quickly how to be the party of government again. And so it's not easy. It's very easy to sit in opposition and just say you shouldn't do that, that's rubbish and all that. That's great, but look at how the SNP has struggled to become the party of government. But the fact is, the real crucial element of this election and in Labour's likely victory is that it reinforces UK democracy. It means that Scotland will vote for the party of government, and it will mean almost certainly, I think it's either the 11th or 12th time that a Labour government will have been formed on every occasion that a Labour government has been formed, the people of Scotland have also voted Labour as the largest party in terms of seats won every time. And so you get all these commentators saying, "Oh no, they win it despite Scotland." Really? Well, they've never done that before. Never, not one time. So what on earth makes you think they're going to do it this year? So that's the truth of it. I think it will be, to my mind, a genuine blow, a really perhaps fatal blow to the chances of Scottish nationalism at any time in the near future once Scotland votes for a party which forms the UK Westminster government. I think it is absolutely crucial. And that's why I'm so outspokenly behind Labour in a lot of these constituencies, not just for that reason, but because they're ahead anyway, and there's no point pretending they're not. So, yeah, I think it's crucial that it happens. Very important.
Yeah, I wonder just what kind of... I mean, of course, it takes away that whole argument, as you say, Scotland never votes for the government. But it votes for... Never, so it doesn't get the government it votes for. But it's, as you say, a false argument. But they'll surely come up with other false arguments. But it becomes... I mean, there will be a diminished force. I mean, what are these... we'll talk about polling in a minute, but it'd be very diminished, right? So... well, I'll tell you what, why don't we just go on to the polling thing right now? Might as well do that if you want to talk about that. Because I think it is instructive, because we see these, so many polls coming out right now, and how can we make any sense out of them?
Indeed. So, as you know, guys, I've talked at great length about tactical voting in recent weeks and months, and a lot of people have said to me, okay, on what are you basing this? And if you remember, I came up with an initial tactical voting guide which said, well, looking at my analysis of each of these seats, these are who are the parties most likely to win, because at that stage they hadn't even appointed candidates, most of the parties. So that was just a guess, really. But it was a guess based on, my analysis of these things. When the actual polls came out some months later, I was right, I think, with something like 52 out of 57. So it was a pretty good guess. But those polls were based on obviously what people were saying to them in the constituencies. So there was there's a guy, I won't name him, but you know him, and he's told us a lot about what's going on in one of the parties, and he has said, the two of the main pro-UK parties are using a company called Electoral Calculus, and what they do is they employ a polling methodology using what's known as MRP data. I won't even begin to try and describe it. It's very complex. But
we're getting a lesson now.
So I will do in
we're at school.
I will do in subsequent weeks, I promise. But this was widely used apparently in the 2019 general election. I'm told it had a 95% success rate. Now, but that aside, you have the more traditional, if you like, polling companies like YouGov and who's the other one? Survata. All those. YouGov produced a massive poll yesterday, a really big poll of 14,000 people UK-wide, albeit the sample in Scotland was a good bit smaller. But the results that it produced in Scotland were not really in line with recent polls. Recent polls have had Lib Dems in Scotland, that is, have Lib Dems in 5, Conservatives in 6, Labour about 30, and the SNP, whatever the difference is, so 15 or something like that, but maybe even higher. Anyway, so yesterday, YouGov came out with Lib Dems on 1 in Scotland, 1, the Conservatives on 5, SNP on 17, and Labour on 34. That's what they've come up with, and that's a big, reputable polling company. You're looking at that, though, Lib Dems, they're very unlikely only to win one seat. I mean, they'll win Orkney and Shetland, because they always do. Always. Caithness and the other ones are North East Fife, the one in Edinburgh, Southwest Edinburgh, is that the one where Christine Jarney is? And the other one is Mid Dunbartonshire, which is where, Sturgeon did all this when Joe Swinson lost. They're looking very good for at least 4 or 5 seats. Conservatives, 5 or 6 is about right. Labour, it's going to be something around 30, and that just leaves the SNP on 17. Now, I genuinely, for days now, I've been saying to people, get your money on the SNP winning fewer than 20 seats, because I can see them winning 17, but I truly cannot see them winning, certainly not 4 more. I can't see which 4 seats they'll win above that 17. And I think that's about where they are right now, guys, honestly. So amazing to see this. You're now looking at Labour having double, literally, the number of seats the SNP has, which is, that's a 2/3 majority or whatever it is, so it's huge. So very, very...
You think it will not nice, tighten or loosen when it comes to the date, because you've got all these blustering SNP people who are saying you still think the dream is going on. And you all know that sketch, the one where the Braveheart goes into the polling booth.
That's right.
And he votes against.
That's right.
Now, how much of that is going to go on in this? People are just going to go, but it's a dead loss, really.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, yeah,
I mean, how much?
I think so. I mean, I see nothing that could possibly, well, not nothing could possibly, anything could possibly happen, but I don't see anything. I can't hang my hat on anything that would make the SNP stop. I can't see what would actually change that around, because they're poorly led. They've got no message. They've got no real offering. I don't see what could turn it around. We know that, for example, today Salmon announced he's going to stand in the 2026 Holyrood election in a constituency seat. So he's obviously still going to be taking pot shots at them. And I suspect he's got another couple of surprises maybe in line for this election. So I don't see how the SNP can galvanise themselves and get any more support, win any more support. I really don't see them turning around many large deficits in any of these polls. So unless the polls are wrong, which is possible, it could be. But what's interesting also, and I was talking to Alan Sutherland about this, he's saying, he's still of the opinion that in a couple of seats we disagree. One is Aberdeen South. Come on, if I can just talk about that for a second, guys.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, he's in that area, is he not?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm about his local knowledge totally. I think I've been to Aberdeen once, so I know nothing about the place. But there are two guides that are out there right now. And there's one which is like from the Unionist clubs, which I pretty much put together. And there's another one which is from Scotland and Union. Now, the Unionist club one here. Exactly, right. Now, the Unionist club one uses pretty much my analysis originally, plus what they think is most likely, given their knowledge of some local areas and to a large extent, some of the candidates they know and they, if you like, know to be quality candidates. Scotland Union seems to be based more on current polling. Now, obviously, Scotland Union's got a little bit of a Labour bias, and not bias, but they've got a Labour connection in national stuff, and which is fine. But the problem you see from these guides is, you look at, say, a seat like Stirling or Aberdeen South, as I said, or Argyll, Buton, South Lochaber. In all of them, the Conservative and Labour votes are pretty much equal, about 20.
Yeah, very close.
That's it. And you've got the SNP support on, say, 34 or 35%. It's very difficult, because you've got the guys like Alan will say, no, you look at this seat here, Labour won't win here. And then they do, and the guys in Labour are saying, hang on, no, we're actually ahead of you in the poll. How can you
I think it's a very difficult situation. I think to some extent that's where tactical voting does break down, when it's very close like that. I mean, I was looking at that actually today. Aberdeen South, it's like, let's just say Labour's at 26 and the Tories are at 24. Well, but combined, they're much more than the SNP. But because neither side wants to give way,
that's it.
The Tories or Labour, then the whole thing's going to fall apart, and SNP can get through.
That's where it does fall apart, and it falls apart in the absence of any agreement that we will, as a collective, vote tactically, because underneath it all, both parties are in it fundamentally for themselves, and you can understand they're trying to win an election.
Well, it's true; they have to do that, but it's up to the public. But then you can't get a public message out enough, because then you're going to come up against this thing. Well, I'm a Tory. Yeah. If we all actually voted, if the Labour people voted, see, this is the problem though. If the Tories say, well, if the Labour people voted with us, then we would win. But the problem is the Labour people will generally not vote for Tories.
That's exactly right.
This is a very important factor. So basically, the Tories in that area should really just vote for Labour, because they'll do that, willing to do that to win and beat the SNP.
If the aim,
so it works one way but not the other.
Generally works one way.
It's to a great extent that's true, and I think Labour voters wouldn't deny that. To be honest, they will very rarely vote Tory tactically. That being said, however, you look at the last three, or not so much three, the last two general elections. There was an element of Labour voters going across to the Conservatives, no question, because you saw it in seats like my constituency right here, when the Conservatives got far, far bigger votes than they had done. And this just brings me on to something I just want to mention. My message to pro-UK parties is, it's no use you saying, look, Labour can't win here when polls say otherwise, particularly, or at least if polls show that Labour's well ahead of the Conservatives, because what that means is the Conservatives can't win there either. And then they always go back to, oh yeah, but look at the 2019 result. Is there just not going to be that big a swing? Bear one thing in mind, the 2019 result, my views, Corbyn was a leader, it skewed everything. But also, people voted Conservative because they thought, well, I'm not going to vote for that idiot, so I'm going to vote for this. But as soon as that vote was cast, that was it. That's not a Conservative voter as such. It's just a guy saying, right, I'm going to vote for them because I cannot stomach voting for this absolute unelectable clown. That doesn't mean you've got a body of Conservative voters you have to convince to vote Labour. They're already going to vote whichever. Like people, I know there's been a criticism of me personally on one particular site saying he's just telling us all to vote Labour again. I've never told anybody to vote Labour before. In the last 3 elections, I've voted Conservative. In the last election here, All for Unity endorsed the Conservatives in this region, and I voted for Jamie Green. It was the other people, like the Unionist Club members, who were saying, don't vote All for Unity, vote Conservative first, Labour second, and Labour first, Conservative second. And I was going, guys, that's just you literally having your second votes. You're not understanding this. Now, the same guys are saying to me, no, you shouldn't be telling people to vote Labour. I'm telling people to vote Labour because Labour will win the seat and the Conservatives won't, or they might win the seat, but the Conservatives certainly won't up here. So this is my message to these guys. There's some particularly Conservative, although not mainly, there are some Conservative activists and candidates who are saying stuff they really shouldn't be saying, like, if the Labour can't win. If you're going to say that publicly, you better be very, very sure of yourself, because if Labour does win there, or even worse, if Labour comes a very narrow second with the Conservatives back, don't expect to be trusted again, because people see what you're saying.
Well, the thing is, we have a job to do here. This is the point. We have a job to do here. We have to get rid of the SNP. After that, you can do what you like. You can vote for Labour, whatever, back to two-party politics, with maybe Lib Dems in the middle. But we need to get rid of this cancer here that's affecting the whole thing. It just affects the whole... The very fact that we have to do tactical voting shows how much nationalism distorts the political situation in Scotland. Okay, very good there. All right, we're going to talk in a minute about a party political broadcast. So we'll be back in a second with that. Right, we're so happy to have you with us on the show. And if you would like a great t-shirt like this one, look at that. Abolish Holiday, amazing that is. Then please do go to the Majority shop, and where you can buy t-shirts like this, mugs, and mouse mats, even all kinds of things. It's amazing. We should probably put an apron in there, but anyway, actually some of the designs are pretty good. I love Scotland too much to be a nationalist, for example. It's very nice, ladies cut. Anyway, so please do that, and a little bit from the sale of each one goes to help us keep the show going as well. Right, so I have to go back a wee bit because this is back. And the thing, okay, so election season wouldn't be anything without the party political broadcast. Really lavishly funded affairs, showing politicians in their best light, which is the problem for the SNP because they don't have any money. So they decided for the simple and cheap approach, approach toward John Swinney talking to us in an undertaker's office. Looks of it.
Must have been the local undertakers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show a bit of this because it goes on for a while.
Hello.
Hi.
It's just 4 weeks since I became leader of the Scottish National Party and the
Disastrous.
First Minister of Scotland.
That's a shame.
I came forward out of a sense of duty to bring people together, to serve Scotland, and to make our country as successful as we can possibly be. As in all walks of life, things come along that you don't quite expect.
No.
And I didn't really expect to be facing a general election in my first weeks in office. But on Thursday the 4th of July, you will be asked to vote in that election. I'd like to take just a few moments of your time, along with my Deputy First Minister, Kate, to talk about what this election means for the people of Scotland. We know that the cost of living is at the front of everybody's mind.
Right, anyway, we get the idea.
No, I want to see her speaking.
Oh, right, okay.
It's so ridiculous. The double act is so ridiculous.
That combination of decisions taken by Westminster have pushed up household costs. They've hit the economy hard.
They're going to pretend to speak to each other.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yes.
On our National Health Service.
But we've never allowed the bad decisions taken by Westminster to constrain our ambition
talking to us now.
for Scotland.
I don't know who she's speaking to.
To deliver economic growth so that we can eradicate child poverty.
Well, why is it up higher?
And invest in our public services. We've got a really sharp focus.
Whoop, she's talking to us again.
The economy firing on all cylinders, and it will.
He's got his neck out like a giraffe again.
So why didn't they do any of these
Scotland's
things?
potential is enormous. And it will only
I think
become greater.
there's any
with
comments.
Right
Independence.
here, right now, within our
It'll only
existing
become greater
powers,
with
the
independence.
SNP Scottish Government has been working hard for Scotland.
Yeah, right.
We've delivered the best performing accident and emergency service in the United Kingdom for.
What do you think the
10
budget
years.
for this was?
We've helped
£5.45.
through free
Exactly.
prescriptions, free university tuition, and free bus travel for under 22s.
Free.
And for businesses, we've slashed or abolished rates for more than 100,000 premises.
Not like
No,
in England,
I
they
don't
haven't.
think so.
Destination in the UK outside London for foreign direct investment.
That's because it's
And
been
we've
so low
established
for so
the
long.
National Investment Bank. to
Oof,
invest in
mad and scandal.
Yeah, the
None of these
private
achievements
little
can
bank.
be taken for granted. There's only one party that will protect free prescriptions and free university tuition. That's the party that introduced those policies, the Scottish National Party.
Labour introduced free prescriptions, you're lying.
SNP wins, Scotland wins. So on the 4th of July, vote SNP to put the interests of Scotland first.
We're asking
We
you
will
to vote for a future made in
put the
Scotland.
Scotland's of interest,
for Scotland.
Scotland's interest first, but it
Vote
would be SNP.
for Scotland.
Well, it's like that whole conflation of, Scotland is the SNP. Quite disturbing for a part, but to me it looked a bit like he pulled out Kate Forbes' ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah, quite.
That's what it was, and he goes like, "Hi, Kate. What do you think?"
Exactly.
And she goes, "Got like a year." That's what it's like. That's what it's like. Get the wee, she's moving.
Awful.
What do you think?
They were
there,
just
Kate?
having a natural little chat with each other as they often do, I'm sure.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Isn't it great? Well, guys, I have to say, I found it a bit creepy, and he's like
The whole Undertaker vibe didn't really didn't help you.
he's like that's the whole thing about putting his head to one side and a 2-second pause after one sentence, and then that was like I remember a first year senior school teacher addressing a bunch of us. We were 11 years of age. I just started a new school in England, Corby, and the teacher looked at us exactly like that, and I thought, God, you're you're just an odd individual. And Forbes was like, as I said earlier, being at Sunday school, and this smug woman talking to a bunch of 5-year-olds who'd rather be absolutely anywhere else. And that's what it was like. And you know, it reminded me of, and Jill will know what I'm talking about here, it was like the seaside mission on Troon Beach in the 60s, when you had these kind of odd Christian people who'd turn up with guitars and stuff, and they'd have you singing along to the words of popular songs, but with different words, saying, knock, knock, who's there? Could it be Christ who's calling? You're thinking, this is evil. This is right. And that's what it reminded me of, these odd people trying to get these.
Yes, it's very unnatural and very, very forced. It's like, okay.
Very odd.
Hello.
They should have given them a good drink before
I'd
they
like
did
to.
it.
I'd like to.
They could have told a
That
joke.
would have been better.
It's like, absolutely. Let's face it, Mary, you and I took part in the All for Unity Party political broadcast, which Niall Fraser shot. That was 10 times better than this rubbish. Let's be honest.
Yes.
And a lot more came over about every one of the.
We had a budget of like
Yes.
0, I think.
Like, he drove up here. We went outside and filmed it there. I gave him some chicken for his dinner. That was what the budget was. It was just ridiculous.
Well, that was more budget than was done on that one. It's like, hello.
They bought a plant. I
I'm
think.
here to sell you. Have your loved ones. Do you want to leave something
Take
for your
care of
loved
them.
ones?
Exactly.
That's what it's like.
It was also like, those adverts you see on Sky TV. Oh, I've just been to a funeral. It was a lovely service. Oh, and she played for her own funeral service. Oh,
Yeah, it's
Christ,
exactly
please
like that.
stop this, please.
I like this.
It's
You know
okay.
it's bad when the plant behind him has more charisma.
Yeah,
Oh,
right, that was awful.
Very good. Right. Okay. That was please make more of these, and we can show them in entirety and laugh all the way through them as well, and mock them. This is a big point.
Mocking
We like this. Anyway, the fail. FAIL, big letters.
Here.
Should be posted on top of that. Right. We did the polling part already. Next up,
Right.
Mary is going to talk about how £450 million somehow went missing or wasn't used.
No, it's
Let's
not
put it up.
missing.
Well, it's kind of missing.
I will
anyway.
explain all. Don't
Right.
worry.
Okay. All right. Back in a second. Right. Okay, Mary, you're
Well,
up.
I actually feel a little bit ill having to tell you about
Oh,
this. Yeah. The Scottish Government are going to give back more than £450 million back to the EU because they had given us it for key economic and anti-poverty projects. And so the Scottish Government are going to give it back to Brussels because they haven't found a way to spend it For God's sake, it's not like Scotland doesn't need the money. It's a lot of money, guys. That's £500 million almost. Anyway, according to EU data, Scotland has already returned €199 million from the fund, and Scotland has been unable to spend the other €331 million that formed part of the 6-year programme. So it's nearly £451 million at the current exchange rates.
Wow.
So that figure is 28% of the funding that Scotland was allocated in the past 6 years. And by comparison, Wales is on course to return only 9% of their money, England 6%, and Northern Ireland 2%. So that's 9%, 6%, 2%, and we're returning 28% of the funding that we were given. So this funding was supposed to be as investment funds for schemes to boost out like employment, education, training, and to support small and medium-sized businesses. And that's what makes me feel so ill. When you think of all the things that this money could have been spent on and how much is needed, and we're just going to give it back to the EU. We've got our NHS is in crisis. We've got child poverty is high and rising. Economic growth is in the doldrums. And if you think about our public services crumbling and the infrastructure, and the SNP are handing back £500 million back to the EU.
Yeah, that's everything they're talking about. That's like the whole, like they also going on with this dueling of the A9. It's like, I mean, that sounds to me like a good project for EU funds that
Definitely.
lying around. Oh, we've got this £450 million lying around. Can we not put that into the road? You know, it's killing folk all the time, and we haven't dealt with it for however many years.
Well, one of the things I would really like to know about this is, I mean, whose responsibility is this? As usual, I mean, no one's going to lose their jobs over this when they absolutely should.
Well, wasn't Kate Forbes the
I would think
finance?
it'd be Kate Forbes, wouldn't it? What do you think, David?
Minister.
Definitely. She was the one at that time. She was handling the allocation of funds. 100%. It's got nothing to do with COVID. It's got nothing to do with anything else. It was down to her. She was the finance secretary until she went off on maternity leave, and then Swinney took over until he stepped down. It's between the two of them entirely.
Yeah, I think it's almost criminal. Or it should be criminal. Anyway, it turns out, though, that Scotland has been suspended from applying for the funding on 5 occasions because of deficiencies in verification and irregularities regarding eligibility of expenditure. So they basically don't know how to manage money at all. Now, to put that in context, there have been 27 suspensions across the EU during the same period, meaning Scotland is responsible for 19% of all these penalties. Little Scotland is responsible for 19% of all the penalties that they had to give out. So we basically don't know what we're doing. We're incompetent.
Well, you should have had that above that part of political broadcast of theirs, right? We can't. Yeah, we
can't manage Scotland.
A dunce hat for a start, and we can't. Yeah, exactly. We can't manage Scotland. Better for Scotland. Well, what about the £450 million? Yeah. Couldn't you use that to help people? Couldn't you have kept some libraries open? Couldn't you have, helped pay for some teachers, done some projects,
help small businesses, medium businesses?
It's a lot of money, and they're always complaining about this type of stuff.
Businesses are going to the wall all over the place. That money would really, really have helped. And in comparison, again, England's schemes have been praised for being extremely successful. So this programme is actually going to close this month, which means the funding is almost certain to go unspent and be lost. And Douglas Ross, he suggested that their new slogan should be "Squander for Scotland."
That's almost clever.
Not bad.
It's not too bad, isn't it? But I mean, this is just... this is the thing, because they're not interested. I've said this to people so many times. It's like you don't become a nationalist to, govern.
No.
You come to agitate and to get power and get personal wealth and do all that, because it's all about distraction. You distract people away and say, of course you're not incompetent. I mean, you might be incompetent, but you're one of us. You're one of the people that's, fighting for Scotland's freedom. That's what it's all about. Anyway, we'll come on to that more in a second.
Well, I'd like to find out more about who's actually responsible for that happening.
Yes, I think so as well. As someone says, they want to keep the Scotland poorer in order to blame Westminster. Well, they blame Westminster anyway, so it's just another excuse, sadly. Anyway, right. Okay, very good, Mary. Things you can do now to support the show. You can make a donation to the SNPOUT billboards. Although that's not actually supporting the show, but that's supporting our mission of fighting against toxic nationalism. You can buy a T-shirt, which you already saw, but you can have another look. Look at that. Oh, that's amazing. All right, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube. You can tell your friends about us, and you can do all of the above, which makes us feel really loved. Underlined exclamation mark. It's coming up. It's the moment you have all been waiting for. It is the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the week.
Yay.
Right, okay. When is a nationalist not a nationalist? When he says he's not one. A bit like a Zen poem. If a nationalist says he's not a nationalist in the woods, will anyone believe him? That's the thing.
Does he make a sound? Yeah, quite.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
Can anyone hear him?
Right. So this week, Neil, I'm not a nationalist, Mackay, commentator in the Herald, declared once again he was not a nationalist. But it's kind of interesting because Stephen Flynn, as I showed that clip there, actually, he said he was a nationalist. I mean, you've got to own it, at least own it.
Well, they're not all totally ashamed of it yet.
Yeah, that's very good there, Mary. Very good. Right. Anyway, he wrote an article mourning the SNP for ruining. Yeah, he said he was not a nationalist. Well, he wrote an article mourning that the SNP were ruining the chances to make an independent Scotland. As you do. Here he goes. Wake up. The SNP is conning us on independence. Now, this is actually a rerun of an article he ran a few weeks ago and a few weeks before that and a few weeks actually before that, because Neil, despite being presumably quite well paid by the Herald to write this guff, actually seems to be quite good at recycling. Maybe he should join the Greens, actually. And he doesn't have very much to say. So anyway...
Well, you notice the use of the word us?
Yeah, us, conning us on independence. It's like, well, who is us? Who is us? SNP is, you voted for them, mate. That's the thing. Okay, so this one he takes pains to say, I don't do nationalism or flags.
Rubbish.
Partly those are oafish, which I think that's an insight into how some of these people see nationalism. They think they're too clever and too refined to be nationalists, while they do everything to support nationalism. They write articles about the SNP not doing what they want. They support nationalist politicians. They want the breakup of the UK. They hate Westminster. I mean, what's not nationalist about that? I don't really get it. I mean, they might complain a little bit. They might try and say, I'm a socialist. But did you vote for a socialist party?
Nope.
No, you voted for a nationalist party that wants to break up the country, put a hard border in, not do anything socialist, really, at all. What is the socialist progressive policies that they've done to actually make people's lives better? Very few indeed. So he uses the excuse, though, that he says that he wouldn't care about independence if Westminster could be fixed. Yet he doesn't vote for that.
Yeah.
He doesn't vote to fix it. He's voting for SNP. What are they going to do to fix it?
If somebody else fixes it.
How can the SNP fix Westminster? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Anyway. A strong Scottish voice, apparently. Yeah, right. Okay.
Well, I mean, what is that nonsense as well? Yeah. I mean, let's address that as well while we're here. There's the whole idea that basically that if they're going to keep Labour in check, how does that work? It doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
They can because that means that what they'll do is vote against them.
Yeah.
Right, that's the only way to keep them in check is to vote against them. So if you're voting for the SNP, you're voting for a party to vote against the Labour, and then by default that means you're voting with the Tories.
Yeah,
it doesn't make it's nonsense anyway. So there's a lot of nationals going around. You'll see this. A lot of nationals going around saying, "Oh, the SNP have ruined the chance of independence. Nicola Sturgeon ruined it." But this is the thing. It wasn't Nicola Sturgeon that ruined it or the SNP that ruined independence. It was the people of Scotland who voted against it in 2014. The SNP is just coming to the end of its rope now, and Nicola Sturgeon was just its final messenger by taking it to the Supreme Court and failing when she knew all she could have done is just read the Scotland Act. But people like this guy Mackay, the people like the people who used to say, real socialism hasn't been tried yet. They're like, and the Alba people, they're the same. Real nationalism hasn't been tried yet. Well, we've just had 14 years of it. It has been tried, and look at the ashes around us. Yeah. We're all suffering because of it. And while they're still putting the petrol in the fire.
Yeah, quite.
So this is the thing, as I said before, nationalism, it's a vector for letting these grifters in. Anyway, so for trying to desperately convince himself that he's not as bad as the people in movement he's been actively promoting for years, and trying to distance himself from the utter shit show that he's foisted upon us all, and still being on the search for a better nationalism that doesn't exist, and claiming it wasn't him. That's my nomination, Neil. I'm not a nationalist, Mackay. I just think it's ridiculous. This guy's on here.
A very impassioned
I know,
piece there, Mark.
Very much.
He's just like standing there saying, "Oh, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I didn't do this. I'm not a nationalist." Every single article. And you're like, no, mate, you did it. It was you.
Indeed. You know that these people, Scottish independent supporters, would like nothing better than to drop the name nationalist and accuse all of us of being British nationalists, as they've done, and they do so. I remember we had you guys had all that nonsense with David Leask. They love that term, Britnat and British nationalists. It's just, they would far rather, it's classic projection. You accuse others of doing what you are doing yourself. That's why they say all this nonsense. It's all to try and drop that unfortunate appendage, really, the description of being nationalist, which really embarrasses them now. So that's why he does it, I think. But it's just, you're right, he recycles the same article constantly, just says the same stuff.
He thinks he's too, this is the thing, that they think they're too clever. They think they are somehow so enlightened that oafish nationalism wouldn't be their thing. While they do all that, while they do all the same things as oafish nationalists.
Indeed.
Right? They might not go on a march, but they're still got the same aims.
Yes.
You've got some support for this one, Mark.
Right, okay.
Let's see how it goes.
I don't know. It does my nut in every time I see one of these articles. And it's almost like trolling, in a way. Anyway, David.
Maybe that's why he does it.
David, well, not for him. I'm sure not for my benefit. But for his own benefit, that's the thing. As I said, trying to distance himself. Right, David, you are going to be up next. I hope you've got a worthy contender.
Absolutely.
There. Okay.
My nomination for Zoom of the Week is Lesley Riddoch. Yes, good old Lesley Ridiculous. So during the early part of campaigning for this election, Lesley has produced her customary, very transparent pro-nationalist propaganda. You could tell she was instructed to say, right, wait till Stephen Flynn comes on and say something really positive about him. So, of course, that's what she did. So earlier on this week, she started off by much in line with what Mackay has been saying. She said that Scottish Labour MPs wouldn't stand up to Starmer at all. So what would be best option for Scots is a strong SNP contingent at Westminster, said Lesley. So, all right. So you mean like the 48 SNP MPs who were elected to Westminster 5 years ago? They didn't they, Lesley, darling? So, and then she topped it last night with this little gem. She said, I don't know if you've got the quote there.
Yes, which one is it?
It's the one that says, "Okay, I'm biased."
Yes, got it. Yeah.
This is what she said. It's an interesting choice of word, because she said, "Okay, I'm biased, but Stephen Flynn was succinct, honest, and funny on ITV Debate." Yes, Lesley, of course he was. When he said, "There wouldn't need to be a hard border between England and Scotland if Scotland joined the EU." All right, so all those people could just come to Scotland and then just go straight into England because there'd be no border. Yeah, right. Okay, Lesley, we see that. Yeah, or Stephen, whoever. But Lesley said, "Yes, I might be biased." Unfortunately, she spelled biased with two S's, which means I was wondering, did she miss out the letter G and actually mean I'm big-assed? I don't know. I wonder. Somebody pointed out to me, maybe she meant bi-assed, as in she's got two rear ends.
The asses, yeah.
So
I'm looking at this.
If that's the case, Lesley, do us a favour and stop talking out of either of them. Seriously, because let's just remember, Lesley, you're from Wolverhampton. You grew up in Belfast during the Troubles, and now you're in Scotland trying to bring destructive nationalism here. Given your background, you, madam, should know far, far better. And that is exactly why you, once again, are my nomination for Zoom.
Oh, that's quite good, actually. Quite good. It's quite good. I was surprised. Remember a few weeks ago when, we found out, or I found out, everyone else seemed to know, that she was actually being paid for all this stuff in Denmark.
Right.
Like, wait a minute.
On the payroll.
Absolute nonsense. Have you been to Denmark? Has anyone been to Denmark? This is the big question.
No.
Tivoli Gardens.
I've been in the airport.
I'm sure it's very nice and fine, but Denmark's Denmark, and it's not Scotland.
Right. She was talking about Iceland today, guys. That'll be our next.
They never stop. We're up in a big challenge here, though. It's going to be Mary's, and we'll be back in just a second with that. If I can find it. Right, Mary. There you go.
My Zoomer of the week is the Scottish Muslim Awards.
Oh,
I know this might be a little bit controversial, but it really made me angry. Okay, the organisers of this Scottish Muslim Awards are boycotting a hotel because it hosted the Israeli women's football team for the Women's Euro 2025 qualifier, Scotland against Israel. So these awards claim to celebrate the success and personal achievements of Muslims from all walks of Scottish life. Well, that's to be commended. And they were due to be held at the McDonald in Shira Hotel near Falkirk in September.
I think so.
But the organisers have now decided to change venue, they say, in solidarity with the victims of the ongoing genocide in Gaza.
Oh.
They've said choosing to host a national sports team of Israel while its government continues the horrific and illegal slaughter of families in Gaza is not acceptable and not in line with the values of the Scottish Muslim Awards. Therefore, we will choose a venue which is in closer alignment with the spirit of the awards. Of course, hosting any women's football team is probably against the spirit of the awards. Can you imagine the Gaza women's football team running around the pitch in burqas? So I'm all for the Scottish Muslim Awards awarding Muslims in Scottish life, but they should not be boycotting a small Scottish hotel for going about their daily business and attacking a national women's football team playing Scotland. Scottish hotels should boycott the Scottish Muslim Awards for their blatant anti-Semitism. They should basically say, no, you can't have your awards here because, you know, you're basically supporting supporting Gaza, which uses its own population as cannon fodder, and for supporting Gaza terrorist atrocities like October the 7th. I mean, if it was the other way around and a hotel did that, if, you know, before this happened, a hotel had said, oh no, we're not going to host the Scottish Muslim Awards. Can you imagine the outcry that there would be?
Yep. Well said,
It's a definitely contender. But Mary, actually, it turns out that it's going to be you that's going to decide.
I get to decide this week.
Yes,
a rare occasion.
Yes, because usually you're doing the captions, and so.
Well, I'm still doing the captions. Well, I still will be doing the captions.
Now, I would just like, before they start that, I would like to put an honorary mention. This is an honorary mention for Maggie Chapman, who earlier on today said that only wealthy white men benefit from upgraded roads. Basically, that motorways are racist. So, it's just a bit of nuttery in there. But I wanted just to put that in because it had been mentioned through the show by some.
Yeah, a few people have mentioned it. Some of our viewers have been mentioning Maggie Chapman, and that seems to actually be the popular vote of the viewers.
Yes.
So should I go with that? I don't know. I didn't actually see that today.
Well, do you want to see it? We can play it if you want.
Yeah, please, if you've got it.
Right, okay.
Need to retain we just need a replacement of internal combustion engine vehicles with electric vehicles. I think if we look back over 100 years, when the Victorians were looking at their transport system and they wanted to get between places better, one of the answers was faster horses. That works up only to a point. Along comes the combustion engine and changes everything.
This is a history lesson.
With technology and the right kinds of investment, we can do that. Our transport system is also a key driver of inequality in our communities.
Mr. Ewing.
She got a laugh from that one.
Please continue, Ms. Chapman.
Our transport system, the Tories might not want to listen to this, but this is actually something that fundamentally affects your constituents as well as mine. The transport system is also a key driver of inequalities in our communities. Those who do not have access to cars need affordable, and Scottish Greens would say free, public transport. We should be investing in buses and trains, and I thank Alex Rowley for highlighting the Bus Partnership Fund in his amendment. People in the lowest income group use bus services more than 3 times as often as those in the higher income groups. According to the Equality Trust, the richest 10% receives £977.4 million in transport subsidy.
When did she say that?
It's coming.
Just £296.7 million. Road building is a subsidy for wealthy, usually white men who are the main beneficiaries of reducing journey times between cities. So we really need to think about what our transport infrastructure should be there to do, for who it's for, and to prioritise public investment accordingly. But some need to
Absolutely,
retain.
absolute nutter.
Okay, she wins. Maggie Chapman wins.
Right. Well, so we'll put that as a group. We'll put that as a group one then. Right. And
Do we all agree on that?
yes, I think
Definitely.
it's nutter. I do
That's-
think yours, Mary, though, was a very strong contest, very strong contender. Let's.
I don't know if you noticed there was one guy who kept making comments tonight. He had to go at me for attacking Christianity. I'd never attack Christianity, mainly because I'm Church of Scotland.
Yeah, well, it's because you didn't like the people coming and singing the creepy songs here.
Exactly.
And
Not
the Tune
Christianity. That let me assure you that singing Eurovision Song Contest entries with songs about Jesus, that's not going to attract a single person to Christianity. But he also said, "Oh, now if I go at Muslims," well, we just did. So,
well, we're not having a go at anyone. Really, we're just commentating.
I'm certainly
on
not
the
having a go at the Muslim
No,
religion.
absolutely
I'm
not.
having a go at the Scottish Muslim Awards who
right. The actual
decide,
process.
who are not concentrating on Muslims in Scotland.
Indeed, certainly
Right.
not. We would never do such a thing. So please don't put words in our mouths. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. So we had some worthy candidates there, and I think I would have won, to be honest.
Well, I think you might have actually.
But
Possibly.
Chapman just went in there, so put that in anyway. We're so happy to have you with us on the show every week in Scotland's #1 politics chat. So happy for your support for these past 4 years. That's from last week's show, and we'll be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And my thought for the week is 80 years since young men landed on the beach of Normandy, an act of incredible bravery that ultimately led to the downfall of the Nazi regime. To them and to everyone who serves or has served in the armed forces, we salute your service. Thank you for all you do for us.
Indeed.
And thank you, viewers, for all your support. And we will see you again next week. So it's goodbye from me.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for your comments.
Good night, guys. Keep voting tactically.
All right, we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Bye.